Virtual Campground is a community of RVers. We gather around the campfire to share stories, information, and travel tips that help you on your next adventure. Your camp hosts, Deborah and Barry Benton, are full-time RVers in search of quaint bookstores, cozy coffee shops with great Wi-Fi, and epic photography opportunities, all to share with you. So pull up your chair and join us in the Virtual Campground. Okay, so when we were talking earlier, you were telling me about batteries being the central component and sort of the starting point for an RV solar system. What do you mean by that?
Well, the 12-volt system is the heart of the RV. So without 12-volt, even your RV fridge that runs on propane, your furnace, they all have control boards that run off 12 volts. So you have to have the 12-volt power to run that stuff. Even the furnace fan is kind of a decent draw overnight. So if it's cold and you're running your furnace, that's a decent draw. So you got to start with the batteries, the storage, and we can go into the battery types. Most RVs come with lead acid batteries. People are very familiar with them. They've been around many years and very budget-friendly battery. And for someone on a budget, there's nothing wrong with them. And then you move up into AGM batteries, and of course, lithium-ion or LiFePO4 batteries have become very popular batteries in the last couple of years and offer a lot of advantages, a little bit more upfront cost, but last many years.
Okay, all right. So the battery system being the main component. So the first part would be understanding what kind of batteries you have, or determining an RV solar budget, so you know what kind of battery system you want to buy in order to accommodate your lifestyle. Whatever your story is for your RV, then you may need to upgrade your battery bank in order to fulfill that desire.
Correct. And some people are, they've just recently got batteries and they want to keep them. Others are like, I'm ready to jump on the lithium, and it just depends on their budget for sure. The one place I tell people to start is a battery monitor, because voltage alone is a really poor way to tell the state of charge of a battery. And especially with lithium, with a very flat voltage curve, you need a battery monitor with a shunt that tells you, are you at 90%, are you at 50% or lower, and when are your batteries fully charged?
Okay, and that shunt that you mentioned, that's S-H-U-N-T.
Correct.
And that's really the go-between between the battery system, if you've got one battery, 4 batteries or 6 batteries or whatever, but it goes between the battery system and this monitor, and it enables you to have a more real-time sense of what your battery level is.
Correct. And it would really go between the bus bar and the batteries, and then the monitor hooks to it, and basically it just records the amps in and the amps out. Okay. And so even if you're currently using your system, because lead acid batteries particularly, you need to measure at rest, and your battery is almost never at rest in your RV. They're either charging or discharging. Yeah. So the battery monitor gives you an instant state of charge that you can depend on.
Okay. So, all right, excellent. And so let's talk about those 3 different battery types that you'd mentioned. So there's the lead acid, which you'd mentioned been around forever, and most cars have the lead acid batteries in them. And some of them are maintenance-free lead acid. Some of them you have to add water to on a regular basis. So that's sort of the baseline. Pretty inexpensive. What's the downside of a lead acid battery?
Well, flooded lead acid, like you mentioned, it takes water, some maintenance on them. They need to be vented, so they can't be inside the RV. And you really only have about 50% usable of their power. So if it's a 100 amp hour battery, you only have about 50% of that for power. And anything in the lead acid family has what's called a Puchert effect. And basically, the more power you draw from it, the less power you get from it. So under high draws, you will drain the battery much more quickly.
Okay. And the 50% thing you mentioned is that because of the chemistry of the flooded lead acid battery, if you take it below 50% charge, then you are starting to damage the cells that are in that battery. You're
definitely shortening the life cycles.
Okay.
And then if you go too far, you can permanently damage the battery.
Okay.
So there's a fine line there between what you can take it down. And 50% is just a guideline, but it's a general safe guideline to stay around and to protect your batteries and retain that investment. They also like to be kept on a charge or kept fully charged most of the time. They don't like to stay at a partial charge for many days or weeks on end. And so that's another thing that helps you extend the life of your batteries.
Okay, all right, excellent. And then the other battery group that you mentioned, the other chemistry, I guess is the way to put it, is the AGM battery.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the AGM is still in the lead acid battery category.
Okay.
It just stands for absorbed glass mat. Instead of having a liquid, it's in this glass mat, which means it's really not spillable. Most of them really are they don't really need to be vented. They do have vents for, if something was malfunctioning on the battery, but most of the time they don't vent. So they can be kept in areas where it's not nearly as critical to be the venting. The AGMs have a little bit better charging. They don't have quite the resistance inside, so they charge a little bit faster. They're able to support larger loads a little bit easier, but they're still in that lead acid family, so they still suffer from some of the same things. And the price goes up, but they are maintenance free, which some people really like with them.
Okay, all right, excellent. And then the third battery chemistry, so to speak, that you mentioned is lithium. Tell us a little bit about the pros and cons of that.
Okay, so lithium actually encompasses several different type of battery chemistries. Lithium ion, the LiFePO4, the lithium iron phosphate 4, are what you see the most traditional drop-in batteries, like Battleborn, Lion Energy, Life Blue, Renogy, those type of batteries. These are all very mainstream batteries, drop-in battery replacements for your lead acid.
Okay, all right. Now I've heard there's all kinds of talk about lithium in the RV solar world. So there are rumors that I've heard. So let's talk a little bit about this. So I've always heard that with lithium, if it gets too cold, lithium won't charge or it will damage the battery. What's the story there?
So lithium cells do have a limitation of being charged when the battery itself is below freezing. Some people interpret that they can't take their RV below freezing, but it's really down to the battery cells. So it comes down to where your battery is in your RV. If your battery's in a heated basement area of your RV, like a fifth wheel, then it's probably not even a concern. Mostly would be affected by this would be travel trailers with the batteries on the tongue, or Class C's with them under the stairs, or even Class A's. If they're any kind of insulated area, it's really not a concern for most people. And most people that do get lithiums, if they have one of those RVs, they move them inside because now they can. And they can safely have them inside the RV, whether it be under the bed, under a bench. And manufacturers are starting to come out with heated batteries, built-in heated components in them to help the battery stay above that freezing cell mark where the cells will get damaged. But most of these drop-in batteries I just described also have a BMS, battery management system, that protects the cells from you damaging them. That almost makes them more robust compared to lead acid or AGM, because you really have a hard time damaging the cells because there is a little computer system that's protecting them.
Okay, so it recognizes that I can't charge right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to let you charge me.
Correct.
Okay.
And for most people, it's not really a big deal. It comes up a lot, but it's in the real world, unless you're an extreme RVer in really cold climates, for most people, it's not really a huge deal.
Okay.
So.
All right. Excellent. So the other rumor I've heard about lithium batteries is they don't charge well based on the current technology in RVs. So your alternator, when you're driving down the road, doesn't fully charge them, and I've heard that your inverter doesn't necessarily, or your converter doesn't necessarily charge them well. So what is the story behind that?
Well, we'll start with the converter. The converter is how your batteries normally charge when you're hooked to shore power running a generator. And lithium batteries have such a flat voltage curve and a high voltage compared to lead acid that the converter basically thinks they're full long before they're full. So they will go into float, about 80%, and they'll charge very slowly from that point. You're not getting the advantage of the fast charge that you normally get from lithium. The alternators, and this is normally really just for Class A's and Class C's, it doesn't affect travel trailers and fifth wheels that much. The alternator has a direct line to the batteries to charge them while you're driving, and lithiums will take a very big charge. Now actually can tax your alternator by working it too hard if you have a large battery bank and it's low charge and it needs to take a lot of juice. So they make devices that limit how much the alternator can work to keep it from overheating.
Okay.
So travel trailers and fifth wheels that are connected by your 7-way plug, it's really too small of wire to even be that much of a, to make that much of a difference that you don't have to worry about it.
Okay. All right. So. Excellent. All right. So with lithium battery, what are the pros of having a lithium battery bank?
One of the largest advantages is that all of the amp hours are usable on most of them, especially the drop-ins. They're rated at maybe 100 amp hours, and they actually have a little more energy storage than that, so that you can use 100 amp hours of the battery. So that's, as we talked about earlier, you only get like 50% on the lead acid family, you get 100% on the lithium.
Okay.
Another big advantage is their steady voltage. So even under heavy loads, we talked about the Puchert effect, lithiums don't really suffer from that nearly as much. So if you're trying to draw 100 amps from the battery at 100 amp draw or maybe 50 amp draw, it will support that without giving you less energy.
Okay.
And the voltage holds steady. Some other big advantages is lithium really doesn't care if it gets fully charged every day. So even if it gets to 75%, 80%, you're not doing any damage whatsoever. And they're happy to sit in that middle range from 30 to 80%, forever and not be damaged in any way, shape, or form. No memory effect, nothing like that. And so they're a great battery to live with because you can just use them. They charge up. If you end up a little low for the day because it was raining, no big deal. And lithiums charge extremely fast. They'll take a really big charge, so they charge up a lot quicker, and they'll support larger loads. The high draw items we were talking about, they will support those much more realistic. In a realistic world, they'll support those much better than a lead acid battery will.
Okay.
So.
All right. And one of the things that scares people away, speaking from personal point of view, is in the lithium battery family, they are so much more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So really, you have to look at those batteries from a long-term perspective. If you think you're going to be using your RV solar for several years, then there's more of a financial reason for looking at lithium versus if you think, well, I'm just going to be an RVer for the next couple of years, perhaps, or something like that. Talk a little bit about the financial aspect of it.
For sure, there's definitely an upfront cost with lithium, although we're seeing the prices come down. But if you do weigh out the life cycles, most lithiums are guaranteed for about 3,500 cycles, and that's 100% discharge every single day. And if you do the math, that actually comes out to about 10 years. So, and a battery is considered depleted when it's at 80% of its capacity. And so lithiums are rated, most of them are rated about 10 years in that 3,500 life cycles. And if you're not taking them to zero every day, most people get way longer. But you are right, the upfront cost is definitely a consideration. What I like to tell people though is that it is a much easier battery to live with, and even over the course, the longer you have it, the more it pays for itself. It's very hard to damage, and most of them have really good warranties, anywhere from 10 years and even some longer than that. So it's a battery that can be with you a long time, and because of that, there's also a good resale on lithium batteries, especially the name brand ones. So if you get out of the RV for any reason, you can get a decent amount of your return back on them, where lead acid, once they're even used, the resale is almost nothing on them.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I haven't heard that point before, is that resale value part. If you tell people you've got a really good set of lithium batteries underneath, they know that, okay, those are solid batteries, they're going to be around for years, and I'm good to go.
Yep.
Okay, excellent point.
All right, so what we're looking at here is an example of the BMV 712 battery monitor, and the Smart Shunt would be the same thing. They both have Bluetooth. This is just a demo product, but as you can see here, it's showing 85% state of charge. It's giving a voltage, in this case, of 25.46 volts. This would be a 24-volt system. And it's showing that if the number of the current is negative, you're actually drawing a current from your battery. So in this case, you'd be pulling power out of your batteries. And then it's saying you have 25 amp hours consumed. This is just, and the time remaining is based on a discharge floor, which would be longer than 5 minutes in this case. There's a lot of settings on the battery monitor, and I can go into here, and I'm not going to go over specifics, but you can set some very good parameters on your specific type of batteries. And in this case, this is pretty typical for a lead acid battery, 50% discharge floor, 1.25 Puchert exponent, and some other things. So, and then if I go back out and I go into VE Smart Networking, this is where Victron products really shine. So in this case, this product can talk to the smart solar charger, it can talk to a temperature sensor, it can talk to an inverter, and it can share different things. And so all these things, and if you have multiple charge controllers, they will actually sync together and charge in the same manner over this Bluetooth network. Another nice feature is you can set alarms. In this case, you can set a low SOC, which stands for state of charge. So you can set it to 50% or 20% if it was lithium batteries perhaps. You can set low voltage, high voltage alarms, and it alerts you when something is amiss.